Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at absolutely one of the most fascinating tales of human ingenuity in history. We're going to dive deep into the methodical, frankly genius process of the Wright brothers. And this isn't just a story about the first airplane. It's a masterclass in how to systematically break down a seemingly impossible problem. It really sets up the ultimate underdog story of early aviation. Think about this for a second. At the turn of the 20th century, you had some of the most educated, well-connected, and heavily funded minds on the planet desperately trying to achieve powered flight. And yet, the code was cracked by Wilbur and Orville Wright, two brothers from Dayton, Ohio, who literally ran a print shop and a bicycle repair business. I mean, neither of them even had a high school diploma. So how on earth did they actually pull this off? Okay, let's dive into this because the contrast here is just shocking. On one side, you have Samuel Langley. He's the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, one of America's absolute foremost scientists, and he's backed by $50,000 in government funding to build his great aerodrome. Then on the other side, you've got the Wright brothers. Their machine, the Wright Flyer, was entirely self-funded from their bicycle shop profits and cost less than $1,000 to build. The difference in resources is staggering, right? But as you'll see, the brothers had something way more valuable than money. Section 1. Solving the flying problem. The deadly stakes of early aviation. To truly understand their secret, we really have to look at the incredibly high stakes of early flight. In 1896, a gliding pioneer named Otto Lilienthal was tragically killed in a crash. Now, rather than scaring the brothers away, it actually sparked their serious interest. It highlighted a fundamental flaw in everyone else's approach. See, while well-funded rivals were basically strapping massive engines to totally untested airframes and just crossing their fingers, the Wrights uniquely realized that flight had this unsolved third part, pilot control. They knew that without control and balance, a powerful engine just meant a much faster, much deadlier crash. Section 2. The Bicycle Shop Laboratory. Engineering a Scientific Breakthrough. And this brilliantly illustrates their approach. Their daily work with bicycles taught them that an inherently unstable vehicle could actually be balanced with the right human inputs in practice. You can clearly see that methodical step-by-step philosophy in their glider tests from 1900 to 1902 down at Kitty Hawk. They didn't just build one machine, they tested, they iterated, they learned. By 1901, they were dealing with poor lift and a terrifying problem called adverse yaw, where the nose of the glider drags in the opposite direction of the turn. It was actually so bad that Wilbur was totally crushed, famously claiming man wouldn't fly in 1,000 years. But they pushed through, revamped the design in 1902, and finally achieved true control. So what changed the game for them? Well, the answer is their absolute breakthrough with the wind tunnel. The brothers figured out that the widely accepted scientific data of the day, specifically this 100-year-old number used to calculate lift, called the Smeaton coefficient, was just flat out wrong. So they completely scrapped the flawed accepted science. Instead, they built a 6-foot wind tunnel right there in the back of their bicycle shop. Using balances they fashioned out of bicycle spokes and scrap metal, they methodically tested over 200 scale model wing shapes. They gathered the world's first truly accurate aerodynamic data. This was, without a doubt, a total game changer. So the crucial point is their invention of 3-axis control. This is the big one. This is exactly what their 1902 glider perfected, and it's the very definition of what makes all fixed-wing flight possible even today. They understood that an aircraft operates in a fluid, 3-dimensional environment, meaning the pilot absolutely must be able to steer and maintain the machine's equilibrium on all 3 axes at the exact same time. And here is exactly how they broke it down and solved it. First, they used a technique called wing warping, literally twisting the edges of the wings to control roll or lateral motion. Second, they used a forward elevator to control the pitch, allowing them to point the nose up or down. And third, the final piece of the puzzle, a rear movable rudder for yaw, which handles the side-to-side motion. By brilliantly linking that movable rear rudder directly to the wing warping mechanism, they totally solved that dangerous pivoting problem they had called well digging. They finally had a machine that responded perfectly to the pilot. Section 3. Liftoff at Kitty Hawk. Adding power to the equation. To add powers, they turned to their mechanic, Charlie Taylor, who built them a custom, lightweight aluminum engine. And the brothers? They hand-carved their own highly efficient wooden propellers, based entirely on their own wind tunnel data. The whole shebang culminated on the freezing morning of December 17, 1903. Picture it. They're facing brutal headwinds, gusting up to 27 miles per hour. Orville flies 120 feet in 12 seconds.
There were only 5 local witnesses even there to see it. But the real kicker is that final flight of the day. Wilbur takes the controls and keeps it aloft for an incredible 852 feet in 59 seconds. That almost full minute in the air definitively proved their machine was truly capable of sustained flight.
Section 4. Flyers or liars? The world's bizarre reaction. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer disbelief. You would think the world would immediately celebrate them as heroes, right? No way. The reaction was this totally bizarre mix of skepticism and downright indifference. Look at this quote from the Paris edition of the New York Herald in 1906. The European aviation community intensely doubted them, labeling them bluffers. They bluntly stated, the Wrights have flown or they have not flown. They are in fact either flyers or liars.
But it gets crazier, because it wasn't just Europe. In a massive stroke of dramatic irony, their own hometown ignored them. The publisher of the Dayton Daily News literally admitted, frankly, none of us believed it. I mean, when the Wrights made a monumental, record-breaking flight in 1905, their hometown paper buried the story on page 9, right next to the local agriculture news. And what exactly was the press ignoring? 24.5 miles. That is the staggering distance Wilbur Wright secretly flew in a continuous 38-minute flight over an Ohio cow pasture in 1905. To put that into perspective, the brothers had refined their design into the Flyer 3, the world's very first practical airplane. And Wilbur's up there flying literal circles in the sky for over half an hour, while the media is just completely turning a blind eye. The doubt finally evaporated in 1908. To secure contracts with the U.S. Army and a French syndicate, the brothers absolutely had to make public demonstrations. So Wilbur goes to Le Mans, France. He faces these hostile crowds who are fully expecting a bluff. But then he takes off. He executes these effortless, graceful banking turns that absolutely stunned the onlookers. The European critics were instantly silenced. Apologies poured in, and overnight, these two brothers from Ohio were transformed into world-famous heroes. Section 5. The price of invention. Patents, tragedies, and feuds. Let's move to the exhausting final chapter of their journey because it reveals the immense, really dark, personal costs of their success. The timeline following their public triumph is heavily marked by chaos and tragedy. Neutrally speaking, the facts are quite grim. In September 1908, Orville crashed, severely injuring himself and killing his passenger, Thomas Selfridge, the first fatal airplane crash in history. Then in 1909, the brothers entered into fierce, grueling patent lawsuits against rival Glenn Curtiss over flight control mechanisms. The immense stress of these patent wars took a devastating physical toll, especially on Wilbur, who tragically died of typhoid fever in 1912. He was only 45 years old. And shortly after that, a bitter institutional feud began. This dispute was with the Smithsonian Institution itself. The Smithsonian actually claimed that Samuel Langley's 1903 aerodrome was the first machine capable of manned flight. But this claim was based on 1914 test flights conducted by none other than the Wrights' legal rival Glenn Curtiss, who the Smithsonian allowed to heavily modify Langley's original design. In protest of what he saw as a perversion of history, Orville actually exiled the original 1903 Wright Flyer to a London museum. It wasn't actually 1942 that the Smithsonian finally recanted its claims, and the Flyer was returned to the U.S. in 1948, sadly just after Orville had cast away. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a profound reflection from Orville Wright later in his life. He was watching his invention be used as bombers in World War II, and he said, "I feel about the airplane much the same as I do in regard to fire. That is, I regret all the terrible damage caused by fire, but I think it is good for the human race that someone discovered how to start fires." It leaves us with such a powerful question. How do we balance the immense cost and the incredible benefits of world-changing human ingenuity? The Wright brothers gave us the sky, forever changing our world, but leaving a legacy of both soaring triumph and heavy consequence. Thank you so much for exploring this incredible journey with us today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next explainer.